in 2019 and was closely followed in 2021 by the data protection and privacy regulations. Now, the regulations further dive into the Act to make sure the implementation is smooth and easier to understand. As an office, from the time we started in 2021 up to date, we carry out a number of activities, and we have developed a 5-year strategic plan that is guiding our operations to ensure we can effectively oversee the implementation of the Act. Now, our strategic plan includes a vision, which is a Uganda where data protection and privacy is understood and practiced by all. We want to make sure that by the end of the 5-year strategic plan, which ends in financial year 2027, 2028, we at least have every Ugandan understanding and practicing privacy. Oftentimes we think the role of data protection and privacy is for only those that collect, process personal data. However, if we do not understand our rights as citizens or as data subjects, it's going to be hard for us to hold those that have our personal data liable and accountable for any particular offenses. That's why, as an office, we try as much as possible to create the sensitization for the collectors, processors, as well as data subjects to ensure that everyone, wherever they are, they know their rights and they try as much as possible to practice data protection and privacy. And our mission is to uphold privacy rights and safeguard personal data through effective regulation and monitoring for those responsible for data management. We want to make sure that in our implementation of the law, we put effective regulation and monitoring so that whoever is out there knows there is a body, there is an organization, there is an agency for which they are accountable to, just to make sure they do the right thing to uphold the privacy rights of individuals. And our goal is to establish and maintain a comprehensive data protection framework that promotes responsible use of personal data. We want us to have a framework where everyone knows what they need to do through the different guidelines, the different frameworks that we're going to develop and put before every one of us. Once we have our mission and vision and goal achieved, then we'll be close to ensuring that everyone's rights are respected. I thought it's important to give a background of the office and for you to appreciate where, as an office, we want to go in terms of implementation and upholding of privacy rights of everyone. Now, back to the major topic for today, that is incident response. But I felt it's important for us to understand what incidents are. An incident is simply an unexpected and unusually unpleasant thing that happens. Keyword here is unpleasant. When something is unexpected and it happens, we prefer to call them surprises. But when it comes to the security world and anything that becomes unpleasant, it crosses over from being a surprise to an incident. And at that point, we need to attend to it and make sure it does not cause harm or adverse effects. And in line with information security, data handling and all that, a security incident is an attempted or actual unauthorized access, disclosure, modification, or destruction of information. Why do we include an issue of attempted? Someone will say, no, if it hasn't been actualized, then it's not an incident. No, the attempt itself is an incident, and it's from an attempt that the actualization actually happens. And once that leads to access, use, disclosure, modification, or destruction of information, then it becomes a security incident. In terms of security, we are guided by three major principles. That is what we call the security triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So anything that affects the confidentiality of information in terms of access, disclosure, then that is regarded as a security incident. Of course, access is granted to people through the right authorization. But the moment the access or use disclosure is unauthorized, then it becomes an incident. Again, to the triad of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, we are looking at modification or destruction. When you have your information on a server or even in paper records, and someone unauthorized accesses those records, modifies anything or destroys them, you have caused an incident to the security of the information through the modification or destruction. And then the last aspect in the triad, which is availability. We want to make sure that all information is available as and when it is needed and in the right format it was stored or provided by the origin. So it is important that we try as much as possible to ensure security is maintained. And it is important to understand what these incidents that can lead to breach of confidentiality, availability, and integrity are. And how do these incidents actually happen? It can be a breach of system security policy, or it can be through other means, like someone wrongly gives access to a person to access information that they are not supposed to. It could be misconfigurations. It could be rogue or virus attacks. So we want to be in a situation whereby we are aware of our environment, we are aware of what incidents can happen, and try as much as possible to have in place measures that will minimize the effect of such incidents on our data and infrastructure. Now, as the Personal Data Protection Office, our primary concern is around personal data, and here we are looking at privacy incidents. Beyond the incidents that affect all kinds of data that we have stored in our systems, there is a concept of privacy incidents. Privacy incidents occur and they concern the risk of loss or unauthorized access or changes to consumer personal data. Now, what is personal data? Personal data is that information that can be used to identify a person. And the person is the living person in this case. Any information that can be used to identify an individual. At the start of the introduction, at the start of the webinar, Anita gave an introduction of myself. He gave you the names, he told you where I've worked, told you my qualification. So that is information that can be used to identify me as a person. So any incident that can lead to the risk of loss or unauthorized access or changes to personal data is regarded as a privacy incident. Let's take an example. If we have a banking system where customer bank information is stored. I have an account with Bank X. While opening up my account, I provided my name, my age, my email address, my telephone, and I've been banking with that Bank X. And then out of nowhere, a security incident happens and information about me is all over the place. Now that is a privacy incident. That incident is going to breach my privacy. People will know how much money I have on my account. People will know my age. People will know my addresses and telephone number. So we try as much as possible to understand what the privacy incidents are and be able to work towards ensuring that we secure our environments against any security incidents that can lead to loss or unauthorized access of data. And in particular, our concern for today is the personal data. And what happens when there is a privacy incident? A privacy incident can cause harm to me as a person, as well as the company. An example is if we all know that company X does not keep customer information confidential, we'll probably try as much as possible not to associate with that person. And if I give you my personal information, then the next day I find it accessible and known to everyone, myself, I'm affected. Because while I'm walking around, everyone knows, oh, you only see him in ties, but his bank account balance is only 20,000 Uganda shillings. You can imagine how people start looking at you based on how much personal or private information they know about you. So it is important that we keep that information secure, and for any incident that happens, we try as much as possible to mitigate the effects and exposure, as we shall see in the coming slides. A privacy incident can be a breach or a possible breach, okay? And it can be as a result of an action or omission that results in loss, misuse, or theft of unauthorized disclosure of personal data. Why do we talk about an action or omission? I believe all organizations do not have the intentions of exposing any personal information. But like we said, these are incidents. Now, the incident could be a result of an action, which could be intentional, or omission. If I was meant to configure a firewall to block port 123, but then I forget port X, and then before we know, the particular port has been used to access the personal information. Now that becomes an omission, and we have to take responsibility. We shall see how we need to try as much as possible to ensure that some of those things do not happen in our computing or our work environments. Now, after understanding what an incident is, that is both security and privacy incident, we want to know what is incident response, okay? Incident response is basically a strategic process executed to swiftly address unplanned events or interruptions. Now, if you have an incident, remember it is unplanned, unpleasant, and it can lead to exposure of personal information or any other confidential information. Now, the process you go through from the time you realize either an attempt or an actualization of an incident to a point where you can confidently say that, you know what, everything is now back to normal. That is what we call incident response. Now, incident response aims at restoring operational functionality and mitigate potential damages. Okay. If, for example, I know there is a cybersecurity attack or a virus going around the network, and we start handling that particular attack, we have activated what we call the incident response plan or the incident response process. Now, the aim of the process is to make sure we are back to the earlier state where we did not have any incident. Okay. Now, an incident response process or plan should be designed to ensure there is efficient identification, containment, resolution of cybersecurity incidents. Okay. And we'll help you as an organization to minimize any effects as the result of the exposure. We all know we can do our best, but practically it is impossible to achieve 100% security. So just to cover up for the little percentage that may happen on our environment, we try as much as possible to have an alternative way of saying, you know what, we know we have put in place measures 1, 2, 3, but just in case anything goes past these measures, we are able to respond and restore our operations as expected. In terms of incident response, we have two main frameworks that are used, and we can gain guidance from them. That is the NIST and the SANS framework. Both frameworks provide teams with a foundation to construct their incident response plans. Now, these frameworks guide you on what you are supposed to do to ensure you have an effective incident response plan. You cannot use my incident response plan and I cannot use yours because we have different environments, we handle different data, and we have different personnel managing our environments. And even when it comes to the response, we have different personnel in terms of responding to the incidents. But what these frameworks help us is to give us the core guidance on what we are supposed to do. Our roles are simply to localize these frameworks, what is applicable in our environments, based on the infrastructure we have, based on the data that we have, and the personnel that we have, plus acceptable downtimes within our organizations. So when we look up the NIST and SANS frameworks, we should be able to get a clear guidance on what we need to do to have in place clear and efficient incident response processes within our organizations. I know someone is saying, well, incident response, why should we? Can't we do without it? The answer is no. You need to have an incident response process or an incident response plan. Just to cover you, for any unplanned eventualities that happen in our organizations, on our networks, on our systems and infrastructure. The benefits of having the plan in place is, number one, is you have the confidence to face the incident. Okay, if something happens and you did not prepare for it in any way, you're caught unawares and you do not even know what to do next. However, if you have a plan in place, you'll be able to keep calm, handle the incident, and be able to manage the effects that could have come as a result of the incident. Again, the other benefit of having an incident response process in place is to mitigate damage after the incident. Remember, we are all expected to have measures in place to stop these incidents. And these have gone past the security measures that we have in place. Now, our objective and what incident response helps is to make sure you manage the damage. Okay, if an incident exposes personal data and you're able to manage and hold that incident at a point where only 2 records have been exposed. I'm not saying 2 records is small, but it would be worse if we go to 10,000 records. So it helps you to be able to manage the damage. And then the other bit is to improve your security. Remember, as you're going through the incident response, you're able to identify where the weaknesses were that led to this particular incident, and you're able to build on that better security. You're able to improve your processes, and you're able to improve your monitoring just to make sure that this does not happen again. And then maintaining customer trust. When an incident happens and you're the one to let the customer that, you know what, ABC has happened, be on alert. We're not safe. When anyone asks you to do ABCD, do not respond. This happens a lot. I've had quite a number of adverts from telecoms telling us no one is going to call you to reset your mobile money PIN. Banks pass adverts saying, please do not tell anyone your bank access PIN. Okay. Now, when we have such operations in place where we are alerting our customers, okay, we are trying to manage any incidents, you realize that someone has done something wrong and is going to ask people to reset their passwords. You're the first to tell people, you're the first to tell your customers that we have an incident and you're going to be asked for your password. Please do not provide the password. Now, you're maintaining your customer trust. Your customers are going to trust that you're on top of your game in terms of the security, as opposed to a scenario where the customers are flooding your customer care line, asking you or reporting that they are being asked to reset their passwords. Now, at that point, your customers will know that you are not aware of what is going on, and the trust is lost in the security that you have as an organization. And in a competitive world, people will quickly now switch attention to finding alternatives. Again, for us on the regulatory side, if you cannot manage that, the law holds you accountable for any of the incidents that you're not able to manage or report within regulation time. Now, The incident response process, based on which framework you use, you could have 6 or 8 steps. But in terms of what needs to be done, it is all the same. Whether you're following a framework by NIST or a framework by SANS, the principle is the same. The process starts through stage 1, that is preparation. If you do not prepare for any incident and you think everything is okay in terms of your security, then you will not be able to respond when the particular incident happens. So the planning lays a foundation for all the subsequent steps within the incident response process. Now, what do you do during the preparation phase? How do you prepare for any incident that will happen? 1, conduct a risk assessment. I know, number 1, I have personal data in my database systems. And the personal data is sensitive, and it is for 1 million data subjects. Now, you realize that the risk is high. First of all, the people are many. Secondly, it includes special categories of personal data like their financial information or their health records. At that point, after conducting the risk assessment and realizing how much of the data you have, what securities you have to protect, you're able to forecast and say, you know what, in case anything happens and breaks this security, I should be on alert to be able to notify my customers, to be able to hold the incident before it goes out of hand. And that is evaluating potential vulnerabilities. What happens when I lose 1 million records? 1 million records showing people's financial information. 1 million records showing people's health status. Okay, the vulnerabilities are many, the affected data subjects are many, meaning the risk is going to be high. You assess and you're able to put the right procedure for the next steps. Okay, and one of the most important things that you have to plan for is communication. Now, communication stretches in different to different stakeholders. Internally, as an organization, you need to have a channel on how you communicate the incident so that the incident response team is able to activate the plan and start operations of restoration. And you also need to communicate to the affected data subjects in case you need to. I gave an example of a scenario where you need to communicate to your customers not to be conned into changing their passwords. Okay, now that communication needs to be planned earlier. How do you communicate to the customers themselves? You don't want a communication that is going to be misinterpreted. You don't want a communication that is going to cause false alarm. Okay, imagine you're communicating to your customers and you're saying your accounts are hacked. Don't change passwords. Now, you cannot recover from such a communication. Someone already knows their account is hacked. Their money is gone. Okay, so you need to plan and know how to communicate and what channels to use. And then through preparation, again, you ensure that business continuity plans are in place. If your primary, if your primary system is put down, does that mean business stops? You need to have a business continuity plan that allows you to switch to the alternative, which is the backup, and ensure operations go. It could be that, say, for example, your system has been hacked and you do not have access to it. The only solution is to put it down, put it off the network. When you put it off the network, it means operations are not going to happen. When you have an alternative, you switch off the affected system and switch on the alternative that is deemed to be still secure and continue your operations. But all this cannot just happen when you have an incident. You need to prepare and plan for this, and go ahead to keep testing these scenarios just to make sure they will work at a time when you need them to work. After preparation, the next incident response process step is identification. If you're not able to detect and identify an incident, then it will go unnoticed. So it is important that you have identification and detection mechanisms that will alert you of any incidents that have happened or about to happen. Okay? And as an organization, you need to assess the intensity and classify the incident. Okay, it could be a virus attack that can be ignored and all that, and handled without causing alarm to the organization or the customers. It could be a major incident that is going to cause financial loss, reputational damage, whereby you need to act much quicker to ensure that you're now going ahead of the attackers to mitigate the effects of the incident that happened. So identification, you can have different methods that you can use to identify. There are system-based methods like intrusion detection systems, whereby anyone trying to access your system, you get an alert or a notification, including those that successfully access. And then continuous reviews of logs and access to the systems. Sometimes we have systems working we do not realize that we are working with someone who is not supposed to be one of us. Okay, if you don't continuously review the access to the systems that have been granted, review the logs, you will not be able to do that. So you need to have in place identification mechanisms. And again, the identification mechanisms are based on the risk analysis that you did in the planning or the preparation stage. So one stage feeds into another. The moment you realize what risks you're likely to face, you're able to prepare the appropriate identification mechanisms and mitigation measures at the same time. Now, an incident has happened. You've been able to identify the incident. It is important that that incident is contained. Okay. Now, the containment helps to prevent the impact and also avoid the spread. I'll take an example of a malware attack on the network. If you identify that there's one computer that has been attacked and the malware is spreading to the entire organization network. What containment measure do you have? You've identified the incident. You know it is affecting the entire network through computer 2.1. Isolate the computer, put it off the network, manage it, and then you can later bring it back to the network. So the concept under containment is to make sure we minimize the damage. Okay, you isolate affected systems and make sure the incident does not spread beyond what it has covered at the moment. The containment also works hand in hand with the communication that we talked about earlier on. If you realize you have an incident, it's affecting your customers, one way is to communicate to them. If it's a computer on the network, communicate to the staff. If there is an email that is sent to the staff, communicate to the staff to make sure they do not open any email links that are unknown. That is one way you can be able to do the containment. So at this point, our objective is to make sure the incident does not spread beyond where it is currently. And at that point, you were able to isolate the affected individuals, isolate the affected systems, and ensure that only those that have been affected continue to be affected without spreading the effects to others. And then you can handle those affected systems individually before you bring them back into production. Now, somehow I've talked about this, the eradication. Once you have contained the incident, you need to understand what caused this particular incident. Remember, we all have security in place, but now someone has gone past the security that you have in place. It is important that at this point, while you have isolated the affected systems, you go in to understand the root cause of the particular threats. Okay. Once you identify the root cause, you're going to help improve the security in place to make sure such a scenario does not happen again. So it is important that you try as much as possible after containing the incident, you eradicate the causes and make sure you have clean systems, and such a cause is not going to affect the organization again. And then after eradicating or cleaning up, you go back to the normal configuration that was running within an organization. I'm sure very many of us have been told to carry their computers into probably the IT for scanning or disinfection. So that is a kind of eradication that we are talking about. And then once the scanning and disinfection is done, you handed back your computer to go back into production and to continue with your work. So some of these things happen underground without you knowing. But when there is a team that is in charge and responsible to handling this, they systematically follow the process. And then after eradication, we go into the recovery. After a threat has been eradicated, we need to restore the affected systems into their pre-incident state. I'll give an example. If your particular workstation gets a malware attack, and then you're asked to put it off the network and hand it over to the responsible team. Your expectation is that after the technical team has done their work, you will get your computer as is with your work intact. You do not expect to find any lost files. You do not expect to find any missing applications. So it is important that for every incident, we recover to our normal operating state before the incident happens. So, and one of the goals of incident management is to minimize downtime and ensure a smooth return to normal operations. That's why it is important that we have a clearly documented process and work with the response team. All these steps we are talking about need to be documented. We don't want a scenario whereby Stephen knows the incident response process. When he's not around, we cannot respond to any particular incidents. The incident response process is for the organization and not for the person. So it's important that we keep everything documented. We keep the scenarios of what we have identified through our risk assessment clear, so that whoever is on ground at the time of the incident is able to know what to do to restore normal business functionality. And then the final stage of the incident response process is the lessons learned. If you go through all this, you've had an incident, you've prepared for it, you've done the eradication, you've restored business operations, and you do not learn anything, then something is not right. Okay? At some point, you need to know what caused the incident. And when the incident happened, how did we quickly move to restore business operations? And through the documentation, you're able to recognize areas of improvement in terms of your security, and you're able to make recommendations to management on what needs to be done. An example, if you've been working and relying on free antivirus software, you can make a recommendation for the organization to acquire licensed antivirus. So depending on what incident you go through, it is important that you document everything and be able to pick out key pertinent information that is going to help you to improve your security posture. It could be also to improve on your response time. An example, you could be having a response team where 1 or 2 people respond quickly, the third person who we are working with responds after 2 hours. Even when you call, they do not pick. That is the lesson learned, that, you know what, part of our team is not efficient in providing quick response. So it is important that we document lessons learned from every incident to make sure that in case it happens again, we can respond faster. But our objective is to make sure that such an incident does not happen again. And that is achieved through enhancing of our security posture after the incidents. Again, incident response is not a one-time thing. It is an end-to-end process and an ongoing concern. We keep learning, we keep improving. If you think my incident process is well documented, everything is okay, I don't need to add anything, I don't need to learn anything, then you're probably doing the wrong thing. It is important that we understand and know we need to continuously improve. And this we can only go through, we can only achieve through documentations of lessons learned through the incidents that we manage, continuous testing and evaluation of incident response processes. It is important that we continuously test these processes. Otherwise, you may have a process that does not work at all. And if you realize that your process does not work at a time when you have an incident, then it is too late for you to be able to work on that. So it's important that we know every process needs to improve. For example, you're going to change technology, you're going to change personnel. How do you improve with the changes in the technology and the changes in the personnel? So it's important that as organization, we commit testing and evaluation of our incident processes through simulations of what can happen if an incident identified in our risk assessment occurs. Yeah, that's it about incident response. It is important that we just for understanding the flow, we need to prepare for incidents. We need to have identification mechanisms. An incident happens, you need to be able to identify it. You need to contain the incidents, do the eradication, recovery, lessons documentation, and ongoing improvement of our processes. Thank you so much for your attention and time. I'll look through, maybe Anita, do we have any particular questions that we need to attend to?
Yes, thank you very much, Stephen, for that very insightful presentation. I am going to check in the Q&A panel. There are a couple of questions. So one, someone was asking earlier, the regulations require proof of identity for a data subject to access personal data. How about deletion request? Does proof of identity also apply? You can maybe take that, then we look at the rest.
Yes, proof of identity is required. Just imagine if I went to the bank and said, you know what, my name is Anita, please delete records about me and all that. Proof of identity is required, and there are procedures, there are legal procedures that you need to follow to be able to have the deletion request activated.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. And the next question, someone was asking, what steps have you taken to bring data sharks to book? And by this, he refers to the online credit lending institutions.
Okay, I see this is closely related to the first one, which says, why is the online loan borrower, why is it the online loan borrowers have continued to expose public information about their clients? One, it is very wrong, and it is a breach of individuals' privacy. We encourage anyone that has such an incident, please report to the office and we'll be able to handle that. There are a couple of those cases that are being handled and the offenders are going to be brought to book. So in terms of the steps taken, once we get the complaints logged with the office, we do the investigations, and a number of investigations are currently being done to handle such cases that have been reported. Of course, we cannot take on particular cases if they are not reported. Our system allows you to log a complaint or a data breach in case you feel you have a data breach. And there are those that we pick up from other media channels and take them on for investigation. So there is a number of investigations going on to make sure such breaches do not happen again.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. I think I'm going to take like 3 at once. I don't know if that is okay with you.
That's fine.
Okay. So for those asking about the slides, they will be shared to the emails you used to register for this webinar. The recording is already available on YouTube and the link will be shared as well. The next question, Stephen, is where does communication with affected stakeholders, including the PDPO, fall? I don't know if that is clear.
It doesn't seem clear, but maybe
Okay.
if I will attempt to answer in line with if you if you're affected by any data breach, you report to the office. If it's in line with the earlier questions regarding those affected by breaches of or online loan service providers, again, you report to the office. The office will handle the investigations together with police.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen. Now, these two questions are related. Someone asks, are there examples of incident report plans that you can share? We can customize to our organization. And then the other question is, are there templates or PDPO related guidelines for an institution to look at and develop their own? So that is more or less like one question. And then I'll take the other one as well. Someone asks, do you deal with all institutions in Uganda or do you have specific institutions? Stephen, you can have those two.
Okay, thank you. In terms of incident report plans and processes, during the presentation, I talked about the frameworks that are provided by SANS and NIST. These are standard frameworks that you can use. They provide detailed guidelines on how to develop your own incident response plan, what considerations you need to have in place, and a detailed how-to guide to help you be able to come up with an incident response plan that clearly speaks to your organization. So we can share links and templates from NIST and SANS, and these are readily available online. We do not have any particular PDPO related templates in terms of incident response plan, but we speak and encourage you to use the international standards like NIST and SANS. Thank you for the webinar. Do you deal with all institutions in Uganda? Yes. Data protection and privacy is a law that affects every Ugandan, that requires every organization that handles personal data to comply with. So there's no exception for as long as you handle personal data within your operations. You're required to abide by the law. You're required to handle personal data as provided for by the law, and you're required to register with the Personal Data Protection Office, either as a processor or collector of personal data.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll move on to the next question. Someone says, what can you do to organizations or companies that write clients' information or data on paper or books, and after a while you find your information wrapping papers or trash cans?
That is very unfortunate, and it violates the privacy of the particular individuals, and that is a case that should be reported to our office, and we'll take on the investigations to bring the particular offenders to book.
Okay, thank you very much. As I am seeing a question, if you need a training, please reach out an email on info@pdpo.go.ug, and then we'll be able to look at it and see. But our trainings are free of charge. We are always available to train different teams. And then another question for you, Stephen. What measures are there in place to protect my personal data from unauthorized access? And then I'll take that with another one so that we take two at once. Does the Personal Data Protection Office have an information systems audit function that ensures that some of these service providers, for example, SafeBorder, actually have provisions to delete people's personal data from their systems if they request it?
Okay, in terms of measures, what measures are there in place to protect my personal data from unauthorized access? One of the measures is what we are doing now to make you aware that whoever has your personal data needs to protect it from unauthorized access. Once you are aware, then you hold anyone in charge of your personal data liable to ensuring that the personal data they have is only used for purposes of which you provided it. So in terms of measures in place, we provide awareness of the law so that we are all aware, the collectors, processors, and the data subjects. And we advise organizations on what minimal measures they need to have in place. So that should be able to help the organizations understand and know what they need to have in place to ensure personal data is protected from unauthorized access. Does PDPO have an information systems audit function? As an office, we are mandated to carry out data protection and privacy audit on any of the registered entities with our office. And we have carried out an audit of SafeBorder on their operations, and we advise on improvement, and where there are gaps, we follow up to ensure that the recommendations are implemented. Again, if you request for your data to be deleted, you can always follow up with the entity to confirm that your data has been deleted. However, if you feel it is not actioned, you can come to our office. We'll be able to ensure that your deletion request has been performed.
All right, thank you very much, Stephen. I think that's all we had from the Q&A. Thank you very much for today's presentation. I can see we are also out of time. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for the very insightful presentation, and I hope that the participants have been able to pick information that will be useful in their day-to-day work. I would like to also thank the participants for always making it to these webinars. Kindly note that these webinars are always recorded on our YouTube channel. If you want to know about the webinars that, for example, happened in the past, please visit PDPO Uganda on YouTube, and you'll be able to get access to all those webinars, past webinars. Otherwise, thank you so much. Stephen, do you have some parting shots maybe before we close?
I would like to take the opportunity to thank everyone for tuning in and attending to this particular webinar. I hope you've picked one or two things and that are going to help incident response plans. You can always get in touch with us if you need any particular specific guidance in line with data protection and how you can be able to improve your operations. We appreciate your time and look forward to the next webinar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everyone. Happy Easter holidays.